Yes, thank you, Daniel, and yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Hopefully, the slides shows okay. So I'm Martin Jaeger. I lead our solutions consulting team in EMEA. That's a team that helped lead a lot of the transformational conversations with customers, covering 7 different business units areas within ServiceNow. It is quite a massive thing to lead. And over the last 3 years, what we've seen is we've gone through a transition ourselves to make sure that the product and the capabilities and the things that we were driving was well connected. And some of the things that we've been going through has actually led to what we're going to discuss today is the AI powered service operations. So we will be covering a lot of the solutions that span across the entire life cycle, and we'll look at how we're connecting the service management piece with ITOM and how we're leveraging AI to drive further intelligence and automation and optimizations within those processes. So I'll try and take some of the learnings over the last 3 years and actually share that with you, and also show a bit of insights into how we're driving and positioning solutions in these areas moving forward. And I actually want to start by telling a bit of a story, because when I prepped this session, I went back looking at my own history, what I've been supporting companies and CIOs with over the last kind of 10, 15 years. And it was quite interesting to see that some of the stuff that happened 10, 15 years ago is actually some of the things and themes that we see out there today. So a long time ago, well, in a castle near you, or I'm probably not going to do the Disney theme, but I was working with a large telco company and supporting the CIO to really drive optimization and better service delivery within his organization. And what happened with this organization is that they came from a setup where they owned and drove the service desk operations and development themselves. And back then, outsourcing and all these things, cost optimization was big themes. So obviously, they were approached by experts and had a discussion around how do we optimize our operations. So they decided to outsource their operations to these experts because these were obviously experts. So end of the day, they thought they will have a even better service delivery to their end customers. But guess what? This wasn't really what happened in the end. So all of a sudden, customers and the service that they were offered wasn't what they expected. So the customers started to obviously being dissatisfied with the service that they were offered. They approached the service desk. The service desk all of a sudden didn't have the visibility into how their operation site was doing. So they could only basically take in the incidents and process the tickets. So there was a disconnect between what their service desk and the operational people were seeing and how they were driving their businesses. And the funny thing is that, I mean, some of the things that were the root cause of the service not being well perceived and not provided in the way that they were supposed to be providing the service was due to operational incidents and events that cause service disruptions. So, but in all contracts and in all these service outsourcing contracts, their expert said, well, we're just doing what we agreed to. So from our side, the OLAs are all green, it all working as expected. So what we had to do was we had to create a better alignment with what are the actual operations supporting from a service delivery perspective. So we implemented a bit of end-to-end visibility into what they were delivering, and all of a sudden they were actually able to find root causes that they haven't seen before and delivered better service as an outcome to that. and we tied in the service desk into the same view. So all of a sudden they were working out of the same visibility. And by doing that, we brought back great service deliverables back to the end customer. So this is just a perfect example of where if you kind of are working out of a disconnected setup, you're not seeing the same things, and you might have your own silos to kind of support the business and the areas that you're working with. But all in all, it's a life cycle approach. Everything needs to be connected in order for you to deliver a good service experience to your customers. And I guess a lot of this is not new to a lot of you, because it's a general theme that we see out there. So when we approach customers, a lot of the feedback that we are getting is we are having all of these different tools and different data repositories, and there's actually a pretty poor integrations, not supporting the full life cycle. And as a result of that, we end up working in silos, and with that, we end up having a disconnected process. So everything coming from the ideation side of things have to go through planning, build, operate, and service is working through these silos, and it's not well connected. And as a result of that, we're actually delivering a poor experience in the end. And what the funny thing is, no one is really happy about this setup. So the service desk side is not happy because they got obviously customers complaining, and the operational side is not really happy because they're not getting attached and the same views as all the rest. So there's quite a lot of people and unhappiness in the organization due to this. So when we look at what we see in the market today, is that a lot of companies are obviously established and have a service desk to support them. And we do see quite a lot of technologies being thrown into the service desk to try and enhance the experience. So we see virtual agents, we see all the kind of collaborative integrations with tools like Microsoft Teams, Slacks, etc. But in the end of the day, that's only kind of fixing the end side of that. So the front end of things, you can say. What we've experienced is that we really need to attach the left side a lot better to really drive up the full lifecycle approach, but also drive the experience up. So with AI-powered service operations, what we're trying to do is really tie operations and the service delivery side better together. So making sure that it would not just giving new front-end elements to it, but making sure that we can automate and we can avoid potential outages from happening already from the beginning. So what that looks like is something like this, and it's obviously a bit simplified. But what we see is 40% of the incidents, according to our data, is people-generated incident. That means that, I mean, if you're only taking care of the service management side of things and only taking care of those 40%, you're missing out the next 60%, which are machine-generated event. And I'm pretty sure that this side, well, this dynamics will obviously change as we talked about the OT side earlier, and IoT being brought into this as well. We will probably see a slight dynamics and change in these data. But when we start looking into the 60% incident side, there's another thing that comes into mind, is when we look at how technology organizations are operating today, they are having centralized team doing a bit of the legacy operational sides. And and on top of that, we have the DevOps and the SRE side that are doing business applications, working together outside in the business side, driving new applications, microservices and stuff that are driving obviously new applications. So we need to make sure that the 60% and the machine generated side is being captured both from a legacy side of things and as well as the new modern way of handling agile development. And in the end of the day, what we want to do and try and achieve with the AI-powered service operations is ideally three things. We want to make sure that we can automate work as much as possible. We want to eliminate the incidents, and we want to reduce outages. That's going to cross all these 40 and 60% that you have on the left side there. So if we are going to do a small recap on what this looks like, it's about driving AI-powered insights into automation candidates. So we're working with customers to figure out and identify what are the normal incidents that are being reported into their service desk, and which of these top 10 candidates are the best one to go and drive self-service or automation from. And what we're also driving value association with these. So we're actually giving you kind of an overview of the value and the waste potential that you can get rid of when automate and provide self-service capabilities on those. A second thing is reduce work and outages. That's basically our AI-powered service operations. So that's a common market theme. It's all about making sure that you can predict and you can prevent outages from happening on your operational sites. So what we have here is we have all the AI intelligence to take data, and I'll give you a bit of perspective on that in a little while. We'll take that data in, and we'll make sure that we analyze it and we prioritize it into which business criticality that there might be in there as well, to make sure that we fix these as quickly as possible. And the third element is, let's make sure we connect the central and the distributed teams in these new agile ways of working, so that we create visibility across the functions, so that both the DevOps, SREs, and the centralized team know what's going on, and they can all report when they build services or want changes onto the same platform, so we can create visibility across the whole life cycle. And when we start doing some of these things, what we've seen is actually 42% of the top 10 use cases, we can go and automate that. And that actually, 42% of all the work that goes into this. So there's quite a significant savings that the customers can achieve just by automating the top 10 incidents that all request that's being reported into the service desk. So, and you probably all know some of these candidates, like password resets, session timeouts, and VPNs that not responding, etc. So those are also obviously the automation candidates you want to go and identify, but you don't want to stop there. You want to drive as much self-service and automation on top of that as you go. If we look a bit on what are the capabilities that we are delivering to support this, and these are actually a bit of generic capabilities. So you might not use ServiceNow at all, but you can still consider bringing some of these capabilities in to support you in the same way. First of all, when we look at the service automation side, we want to bring AI in to make sure that the virtual agents are being, set up with the right discussion algorithms and themes, so that anything you want to report through the virtual agents, they're capable for supporting you on those. Another thing is the agent assist. Make sure that you attach AI to your agent assist workbooks. So anything that the agent might need in terms of knowledge bases, similar incidents, etc., that we can go and search, and we can bring relevant informations in front of the agents. And obviously we can build further capabilities on that with searches and stuff, so you can build the knowledge articles out to be supportive. Another thing is the AI for operational automation. So obviously, if an outage is likely to occur, we want to make sure that we identify the likelihood for anything to happen, so that we can alert on it, we can correlate it, we can obviously fix it before it really impacting things. So some of the things that you might have seen in this space is log analytics, where you are investigating what's going on through any hiccup that might occur in the log. So in this case, we're actually doing everything we can to identify where the potential outages is likely to happen, and then obviously fix and remediate that as quickly as possible. And the last one is AI for service operations. This is where if you have an incident and if you have a request, you want to correlate that, and you want to route that through the system as quickly as possible. And you either want to also predict or tie that into a change event as well. So anything that is supporting you on the service operation sides, you need to consider how you can use AI for supporting these use cases on top of that. So that's kind of the more traditional service operations capability side of it. And I did mention the new modern way of working as well. So what we've seen is that most customers are going through transformation. So they're moving away from the legacy way of handling IT, and they're, obviously moving into DevOps, agile teams, adding SRE teams to drive further business applications and development. And you want to make sure that when you build the next version of your service operations, that you take into consideration how to support this modern way of working on top of that as well. So one thing is obviously to make sure that any of the changes that the DevOps teams and the DevOps tool change from a CI/CD perspective are adding to your operations, that you have a good understanding and visualization on that, and also being able to automate some of that to speed up the processes. Another thing is the SRE side. You want to make sure that when the business side of developing new functionality, that we register that into the CMDB, so that we are aware what microservices are actually launched, what's the version of these, what's going on from their side. So you need to have a connection to what's going on from an SRE perspective. And lastly, what we've done is we've came up with a terminology called common service data model. And the reason that we came up with this was when we started this journey ourselves a couple of years back, we were faced with a lot of questions on how do you make sure that when you are supporting the full life cycle, that you have the right data attached in the right way to support the full life cycle. So we developed what we call common service data model, to make sure that all the data sitting on the ServiceNow platform are registered in the right way to support all the functionality from plan, build, operate, and service. And we're building quite a lot of enhancements into this. So there is we launched already in Quebec a capability called service graph that has an ETL layer built into it. So any integrations of data coming into the platform, that we're handling that in the right way, and we're consolidating, and we're making sure that the structural of those data are being brought onto the platform in the right way as well. And one of the key reasons for that is also based and associated with machine learning and AIs, because in order for really drive good algorithms and understanding of that, you need to have a common set of structural data coming into the platform in a consistent way. So let's take a look at how a connected workflow can potentially leverage some of the same data. And we've been looking at obviously some of the CMDB elements of this already in one of the previous sessions. But let's assume that you have something reported into your operational management, and they want to figure out what's the root cause of this slow transaction that are running in the application. So obviously, with the AI service operations, we can identify what the root cause might be and how it's impacting either that service or multiple services. On top of that, we want to make sure that is this related to any changes that we've been approving in our service management process. So obviously, we want to make sure that if that's related to that, we can go and identify that pretty quickly. Or it might be related to application, new application release. So we need to make sure that we tap into what are the releases, to which applications does these releases impact, etc. So if it's related to that, we can quickly identify that as well. Or it might be related to an asset management issue. That could potentially be that there's a patch that's needed for solving that particular issue. And that patch or that issue might potentially also come with a vulnerability aspect to it. And in the end of the day, it might also be that we have to look at modernizing the application or rationalization of that application to take place. So what I'm just trying to show you is that it's all connected, and it's also leveraging a lot of the same data, which brings back to the point that we need to make sure that people have visibility and into the same views and data in order to support the full life cycle that you have here. And let's take a look at, if we want to automate some of these use cases that we have on the 40% incident side that I showed you earlier. Some of these requests or incidents might be on the list here, and you probably have a lot of additional ones that you want to take care of yourself. So first of all, you want to make sure that your front end is able to take care of processing these things. So it could be potentially be a virtual agent, a service portal, or similar technologies that could handle the request and the incidents and the ask coming from people. Attached to that, you also need to make sure you have your backend set up the right way. And your backend needs to consist of two things. It needs to consist of obviously an integration to the system of records. So you might need to go and look up what are the session ID, what are the assets all about, what are the people entitled to, etc. So you need to be well connected to your system of records if it's not already in the CMDB through the integration that you've done. Another thing is you need to make sure that your workflows can be executed. So you either need to have a flow designer set up yourself or robotics interface for you to kind of automate those use cases. And ideally what we want to end up with is higher productivity, better ESAT, CSAT scores, and more speed in your deliveries. And obviously you want to make sure that your noise and incidence volumes on some of these trivial tasks are being brought down so that your service operations can focus excuse me, can focus on more productive things. And if we look at how the AI-powered service operations are leveraging AI ops, most of you will most probably have a list of your applications. Some are critical, some are less critical. So you'll probably have a monitoring or solution where everything kind of connects, and it even might be in ServiceNow that this is all connected. So in order for this to really work well, you need to make sure that you have your CMDB, obviously your CIs in place. So you most likely importing data or discovering these assets, but you also need to make sure that this is a service aware setup. So any incidents that are being reported on one of the CIs might be impacting multiple applications. So that's why you want to have that service aware in there. And you also want to make sure that any changes that you're approving and doing on those assets, that's being brought in there as well, so that you can quickly identify if it's a change that's impacting your service degradation. And on your left-hand side, you're seeing all the monitoring capabilities. So you might have lots of events going in. You might have thousands and thousands of events, but a lot of these might be false positive, and a lot of them might be associated with other root cause events. So you want to make sure that you can quickly remove a lot of noise and only take care of the real important events. So obviously you need AI and ML algorithms attached to that to make sure that you are focusing on the real impacted events that comes into the system. And why you want to do that is obviously we want to make sure that your agents and your teams have all their insights into what they need to prioritize, which knowledge articles they might need to go and look up to solve the issues, to get as much guidance through the use of ML and AI to go and remediate the problem. And in the end of the day, you want to make sure that you have this cross-enterprise workflow mindset into it. So because there's so many other teams and functions that are dependent on this working well. So just one example could be that the service desk might be identified that we know there's an issue, we are working on it, and if customer calls, we can give them clarity into when we expect the fix to be provided, etc. So obviously we want to make sure that this the cross-enterprise kind of workflow themes are a common theme throughout leveraging these data. So let me just end with a few of the outcomes examples that we've seen from this. So obviously consolidated view on things and removing some of the silos and making sure that you're working out of the same platform data and workflows. There's a huge improvement in time to restore services based on that. So, and these are actually real case examples that we've gone and achieved with customers. Another thing is obviously you want to reduce as much noise. You want to make sure that customers and your employees are as self-sufficient as possible in regards to looking up self-services and being served by automation as much as possible to remove that noise. And another thing is deflect some of these incidents. So obviously we want to be on top of the predictive capabilities to remediate some of these things, but we also want to maybe drive machine learning to allocate some of these incidents to the right people as quickly as possible, so that we can fix the problems as quickly as possible. And then the last thing is the whole increase of innovation due to the fact of working more agile and having the SRE support, what have you, is all about speed of delivery of things. So we also need to consider how we deliver on requests and incidents within obviously our parts of the world. So anything we can do on that side to make sure we reduce the delivery time across any incidents or request. We want to do that as well using some of the ML and AI capabilities. And with that, I just want to have one last slide. Obviously, we can tie all this onto the platform, but just cautious of time. I want to move into just a quick heads up on a virtual workshop that we're hosting the 29th of June, in case you want to go more into details and in depth of our ITOM capabilities. There will be a session provided end of June. So hopefully, I assume we will share the data, the slides, so that you can go and look at the link in here as well. But we're happy to see as many customers into that session as well. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Daniel. Thanks a lot.